Hello and welcome back everybody. Today we're going to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 219. I want to talk about, all of the parts in this chapter individually. So starting off with Bakugo and Todoroki in this chapter, I think what we saw from these two is definitely going to lead up to something in this arc. At least that's what I'm imagining, because it really seems like they're pushing the Bakugo and Todoroki agenda starting this chapter. Well, a little bit last chapter too, but that was mostly as one or two panels. In this chapter, we got to see a more extensive fight going on between Bakugo and Todoroki against these thieves. They're not really villains. I mean, they're technically bad guys, but all they really were after at the end of the day was just stealing these bags and purses because they wanted some money, because it's the holiday season and it's a perfect time to really be doing some thievery. I mean, that's really what their mindset was, although the supposed leader of these people, the guy with the carbonized water quirk or whatever it was, he really seemed like the type of guy who would put himself on the line even for something as little as this, and that is probably what led to his downfall, because he really put himself on the line for something as petty as theft. And I think Bakugo put it better than most people, like, get a job, asshole. Like, that's pretty much the message he gave this guy. He told him to get a job because this is just not worth it. You're just wasting your time. You're gonna get time in jail potentially, maybe not, but very much potentially. Yeah, I mean, especially given that they were, attempting to resist arrest, which kind of implies that, I mean, they're fucked basically, and that's that. And now you just gotta live with the fact that you tried to steal a few bags and you ended up in jail for it. Now, the other thing that happened in this fight was, of course, the whole thing with the civilian that Bakugo had to rescue, because this civilian apparently thought that this was some kind of show, like some street show, because I guess this thing kind of happens, during the holiday season. Like, you have these people doing different shows on the street, and this person kind of confused an actual villain versus hero fight with a street show, which led to a potential injury, which fortunately Bakugo was able to prevent. But he did actually scold her quite a bit by telling her that if she's going to die, do it somewhere else. That's really what he said, like literally. I mean, at least in this translation that I read, which, depending on whether you read the chapter, you may have a different translation, especially if you read the official translation. Whenever that comes out, that's probably gonna be different. But it really shows you that some people, they don't really understand the difference between an actual threat and what could potentially be a show. They're not really able to read between the lines, so to speak, especially with this person. I mean, I think some people in the My Hero Academia world really needs to have a built-up sort of immune system for villain attacks, because at the end of the day, the villain crime rate is probably significant. I'm not exactly sure how significant it is, but I think it is pretty high. So when you think about it like that, most people probably would be very wary when it comes to stuff like this. Like, if you see a fight in the street, you shouldn't immediately think, despite the fact that it's a holiday season, well, what if it's just a street show? Like, I don't think that should be the first thing that comes to your mind. So I'm gonna have to really be on Bakugo's side when it comes to this civilian. Like, she was not in the right to go anywhere near that fight. She deserved every bit of that scolding by Bakugo, and that's that. Now, the next thing that happened in this chapter, which interested me, of course, was the whole thing with Giran. Now, with Giran, what I really want to talk about is, of course, the fact that they picked him over anyone else to find and kidnap, I guess, to get information out of them, to find a way to infiltrate the League or start a fight with the League. Because last chapter we learned that the Quirk Liberation Army, or the Meta Liberation Army, can't remember what it's called really. I believe in the official translation is the Meta Liberation Army, which makes sense, I guess, because in a lot of medias, when you have a superpower system, they're referred to as meta-humans, so I guess that's kind of where they're getting it from. But despite that, I'm probably just gonna call it the Quirk Liberation Army because it's a lot easier to remember. Despite that, so Giran was the one that they kidnapped, and they're trying to get information out of him so that they can get further into the League. Now, he didn't reveal anything, and he is very much adamant on not doing so either, because he says that he will not sell out any of his clients, because he's a broker, he supplies the League with their equipment and all that kind of stuff. So you can probably imagine that he doesn't really want to sell them out, because if he does that, he's not really going to be able to work with them in the future, probably, if they find out that he did so. So, I mean, and even that, that's probably going to cause problems for other clients clients as well, because when you look at it from a certain angle, the League of Villains are gonna spread that word, and then everyone else is gonna find out that this Giran guy kind of sold out his clients because he was pushed to the limit pretty much. And when you're in that business, that particular business, which is a very shady business to begin with, you really don't want to make too many enemies, especially when you're working with the League of Villains, I think, because they're kind of like the big shots in the sort of dark end of this world, right? Like they're really the villains among villains, and you really don't want to sell them out. Now, I don't really think that's why he didn't. I think he just has a very proud sense of his job. Like, I really think he just wants to be a really good broker. He doesn't really want that on his conscience. He doesn't want to sell out anyone that he's worked with and recruited or anything like that. It makes a lot of sense. So I really hope that characteristic and that character trait sticks with Giran in the future. It is something that I really want to see more of. Now, another thing that really went down with the Quirk Liberation Army that really caught my interest, and I think a lot of other people as well. I saw some people talking about it on Twitter, which was the whole thing when the equipment that the thieves were using in the street exploded. And we later find out that the Destro group kind of knew about that. They make sure that these things explode if there's any kind of trouble, in order to erase any kind of evidence to where it came from and so on and so forth. So I really wonder if we're gonna see more stuff like that, like some equipment is going to be exploding on screen and we're gonna see some big injuries happening, because I'm pretty sure that depending on what kind of equipment it is, it definitely has the potential to hurt someone, be it the user or someone else. You know, it doesn't really matter who it is. What's important is that someone could get hurt, and I really want to see that lead somewhere. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it has to happen. Like, it's obviously you don't need to have someone get hurt in order for this to be a good thing in the story. Like, I definitely don't see that being a crucial point, but it would be really interesting to see if someone using black market equipment actually ends up getting really hurt because of this danger mechanism that the Destro group was talking about. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about shouldn't really be a big surprise to most people. It's to do with the League of Villains. The very last panel that we saw, which was kind of like a flashback to a month ago before the Billboard chart, you know, before we found out who the new top 10 heroes were in Japan, we see how pretty much everyone, you know, well, not quite everyone, but we see Toga, we see Mr. Compress, Spinner, Twice, Shigaraki going up against Gigantomachia. Now, this is something that's really a big deal, because it's going to lead up to a potential power boost in every member of the league, because what it looks like to me, and I think everyone can pretty much agree, it's not a hostile intention. I think Gigantomachia is really training these people. His job is to make them stronger. That's really what it looks like to me, because Gigantomachia, he answers to All For One directly. He does not answer to Shigaraki unless he wants to, and that is something that's really a big thing to remember, that Gigantomachia is technically above Shigaraki as far as All For One is concerned. And seeing him really just pummel these people the way he has done now, it is something that's gonna show us just what the league are made of. Or like, we are definitely gonna see a power boost in pretty much everyone. Like, when it comes to like characters like Toga, who's not really power based, like their quirks don't really directly help them fight, we're gonna see her improve in other ways, like speed, strategy, and just overall cunning ability. You know, we're going to see everyone improve in their own way, and we're probably gonna see characters in the league fight that we have never seen fight before. That's kind of what I'm hoping. Like, I really want to see Spinner fight properly, because Spinner is someone that we actually don't know the quirk of. Like, it could be his lizard appearance, but it doesn't really have to be either. So we're really gonna have to see just what Horikoshi has in store for the future of My Hero Academia, because we're really looking at a situation where the league is definitely going to be fighting the Quirk Liberation Army, as well as obviously the Hero Association also being part of this whole thing. So it definitely looks like it's building up to a big conflict right now, especially with that flashback. I just don't see how it's not gonna be a big fight if they're showing a big flashback of Gigantomachia training the League of Villains. It's just too convenient for it to not be building up to some big fight. Now, I don't necessarily think we're gonna see, you know, the very full extent of any league member in this arc. I really don't, because I feel like this is gonna be more of a clusterfuck of a fight rather than anything else. You know, it's gonna be more of like a gang war, because we're having 3 factions going at each other technically. So that's gonna be something interesting to see. You know, Shigaraki is gonna want Giran back. The Hero Association obviously want to stop the Quirk Liberation Army for their own reasons. So everyone has their own reasons for going up against the Quirk Liberation Liberation Army, and the Quirk Liberation Army, obviously, they want to fulfill their goal. They really want to push whatever they want to do. So as it looks right now, we're looking at a big fight. But also, I don't think it's going to be a straight up fighting arc. I really don't. I think the fight is probably going to come closer to the end of the arc. Because at the moment, obviously, we don't even know how they're going to tie in Bakugo and Todoroki into the whole mess, as well as how the League of Villains are going to find the Quirk Liberation Army. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out in the future of this arc. Anyway, that has been chapter 219 review. I hope you liked it. Well, the chapter anyway. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. What you think of this chapter and everything that happened. Like the whole thing with the League of Villains and Giran being captured, you know. I'd love to know if you have any ideas as to what path this arc is going to take. Because, I mean, I have a few ideas. I'm not really going to go into them in this video because then it will literally become a discussion video. Might do that for another video. I guess we'll see. Or maybe not. Maybe I do. Who knows? Anyway, do let me know. And as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and I'll see you next time.